Hello once again, Star Wars and Unboxing fans. Welcome to another episode of Darth Tuba, Star Wars Unboxing Show. I'm your host, Darth Tuba, with a very unboxing kind of episode. The items I have here, they all have something in common. Let's all look and see what they might be. What could these possibly have in common? I wonder what. Yes, retro. They are the retro figures. And they have been coming out over the last few years. Ever since the Mandalorian came out, we've started having a series of retro style figures. And I say retro style because they weren't actually retro figures. We have the original vintage collection figures from the 70s and 80s that Hasbro has been kind of re-releasing a set of 6 figures here, set of 6 figures there. They're just basically reproductions of the original, 5 points of articulation figures. And it's been kind of cool, and they always have them kind of like this in this distressed looking pack, with the retro sticker, really meant to engage an understanding of, that nostalgic twist and nostalgic pull that we all have as older collectors. And then they started coming out with these retro style figures that were done in, in the style of the old figures. Now, obviously, when we talk about retro figures versus vintage collection figures, vintage collection essentially is in the vintage packaging, which is a pristine looking regular package racing stripe, but it has like kind of what I've defined personally as like the ultimate version of the figure, like full out articulation, soft goods, weaponry, everything. Well, that's great, and with Hasbro having the 3 3/4 inch license for now over 30 years, approaching 30 years, there has been quite an evolution of figures, right? The figures went from that kind of buffed up He-Man style muscular figures to definitely more realistic feel, and and then getting more and more realistic, and then more recently they've added photo scan versions of their faces, so they really look like the characters. So they've really been able to come up with what really is the definitive version. I'm sure that there will be technology a decade or two from now that'll make them even more realistic, but they've really done that, and it's really cool. But for older collectors, and I think that people my age, but I think younger collectors as well kind of fall into this. There is just something about that action figure looking figure, meaning it looks like a mild representation of it, right? And if you look at Luke Skywalker, for example, I don't know if I have one nearby here, but if you look at an old Luke Skywalker figure, right, you're not seeing someone that looks exactly like Mark Hamill. You're looking at something like a yellow hair, sometimes brown, with just a very plain, almost like a Fisher-Price type of face, and a general basic representation, a basic sculpt, 5 points of articulation, 1 simple weapon. But that is what playing with these figures and using our imaginations as children gives us the greatest amount of joy, and the nostalgia for that is pretty palpable. So they started coming out with these figures like this, for example, for Obi-Wan Kenobi, the 5th brother. And as you can see, and I've already unboxed these, you've seen me open up the box that these contained in, and you can see that it's like that kind of a thing, just a very basic figure. I mean, they do a little bit of sculpting, and that is where they're trying to kind of capture that nostalgic essence. Well, I've recently been going through my figures and doing some reorganizing and putting some stuff off into the sell pile for the next Star Wars yard sale, which isn't happening for about 10 months. But I'm just kind of gathering things up. Why am I doing that? Well, I've mentioned it on the channel before. I'm in the process. It's ever evolving, and I like ever evolving. I am not trying to win some kind of an award for collecting the most Star Wars stuff. All right, it's just what resonates with me at the time. I pick up and I keep it for a while, and then eventually I part with it. And some things I've kept for close to 50 years now, and other things I've only kept for a few years. And there's everything in between, so it's totally fine. But with these figures, with these retro style figures, I have this really nice set of display cabinetry. They're like things that kind of hang up that hold, I think, around 30 figures each. And I've showed them on previous episodes. And I've since cleared them out, and I've started to make room for 2 types of figures. Well, first of all, I had one set of them for all my old vintage figures. That's all there. I just recently acquired, I think it was Lumat, the Ewok. It was the only loose figure I didn't have. And I was able to acquire him, not complete, but I found him, and I put him in my display cabinet. It was the one figure I needed to kind of fill the rest of the space. But then I have another set of these that I was going to use for customized figures, which is, something I dabble in here and there. And then lastly, I was going to use one to display the retro style figures, which is what I am going to do today. So I decided that most of these I'm going to open up. Okay, I did have a couple that I already had gotten doubles of and opened them, and I kept those. There were 2 different types of Mandalorian figures and a Grief Karga that I kept the package figures away. But the rest of them I want to unbox. Now, another reason for this is that, Hasbro's done a pretty good job. I don't know about this one in particular, but Hasbro has done a pretty good job of creating vintage collection versions of 3 3/4 inch characters from The Mandalorian. I believe Queel is one of them. And I believe this is, if it's not the exact same photo art, it's similar. So I figured if I have a representation of the card and everything, I don't need another one. So let's open up the figures and kind of set them up. All right, so that's what we're going to do today. So first thing I'm going to do is just unbox them each, and then I will kind of do a little quick close-up of the figure, and then we will put them into the cabinet, and you can see what that looks like. So we're starting with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, 5th brother, and I gotta say, in all honesty, I've been loving, and I've been loving all of the Star Wars streaming services. I feel like we're getting into some really odd kind of, arguments or whatever, because people say, well, nothing is as good as this, or nothing is good as that. There are some that absolutely adore Andor, and there are some that hate Andor, and there are some who love Obi-Wan and some who hate Obi-Wan. And it's like, I don't understand, why. I totally get being passionate. I'm passionate, I get it. But why be so angry if someone else just simply has a different opinion? It doesn't make sense to me. If you love Obi-Wan, you love Obi-Wan. If you love, there are a lot of prequel fans that loved seeing Obi-Wan and Anakin and Hayden Christensen's Anakin reunite, both in flashback and as Vader and Obi-Wan. So, and this is a character, 5th brother, that existed from Rebels, I believe. And, it wasn't like a huge part in there, but he was there and he existed, and that was good. So that was awesome. And then, of course, we have the Grand Inquisitor. A lot of people had, it's funny, I think I'm going to go through all these figures and talk about all the things people complained about, which doesn't make a lot of sense, because why? A lot of people didn't like that he was not, his character's face wasn't long enough. Is this what we've become? We're complaining about the length of a person's face. Now, in fairness, not the same character, but the I forget the name of the race, but in Revenge of the Sith, there was a species. I think it was, the character's name was Timon Mandan, I think, and it was the one that met Obi-Wan in Utapau. I guess it was the Utapowian race, or people that live there. And he was saying, "There's no war here unless you brought it with you." And then he would say, about Grievous, "He is here. We're being held hostage. Thousands of battle droids." And he had these really weird teeth. That actor who played him was not. Obviously there was prosthetics, but that actor, I believe he's an Australian actor, just happens to have he's very tall, and he kind of has a lanky, build, and he had a longer face. And they used that to create that type of an alien species. All right, but it was based on his face. And now this actor that played this character, the Inquisitor, the Grand Inquisitor, who was in Rebels, right, but only for the first season, I think, or I believe, was that same species. So they went animation-wise with the long face. And I think people were wishing that this character had the same thing, which to me makes no sense, because why are you going to spend money, elongating somebody's face when it's a character? Let the actor be the actor. And I thought he did a great job. And this is great. I love the cape, and I love what they did here. I kind of wish that they would have figured out a vintage thing to do the thing with the lightsaber through the forearm. that was like, but that was only a New Hope thing, and then that kind of ended. And when Empire and Jedi came out, they were doing just holding on to lightsabers like anything else. Next we have Ned B. Whoopsie, I dropped my little thing. Okay. I love how Ned B comes with this little tool. That's awesome. I liked Ned B. I thought Ned B was a fun little character. Didn't say anything. He was just, he was a loyal droid. Sacrificed himself. Spoiler alert. Go watch these shows, man. I don't know. I think he'll fit in my case because those things are a little bit bigger, but obviously a little taller. But again, you can see like just the basics, but you know who it is. That's the thing. You look at it for 2 seconds and you know who it is. Now, of course, can't have the Kenobi series without an Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, this is fun to me because, they included both a blaster and a lightsaber. His lightsaber definitely is similar to, I think, Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. From, like, Jedi Luke from Return of the Jedi. In the way it was set up. Maybe the Empire Strikes Back one, too. But I always like these because, well, generally, I like them. Because they kind of fit in there. And they definitely went for a total like Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was definitely going for some amalgam between Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor and Alec Guinness. And he comes with a little hood you can wear. That's fun. And he comes with his blaster because he does utilize a blaster a little bit more in this show, which I like. So that works. I think the last one I have from this one, Obi-Wan, Darth Vader. Oh, yeah, Darth Vader was another one. I do have Darth Vader, Dark Times. He's upstairs. Kind of have him sitting in on my shelf. Just because I like that they didn't go. They could have gone the cheap route and just remade the original Darth Vader. Why wouldn't they, right? Retro style. But they didn't do that, which I thought was good. They did kind of a different one. And, slightly different soft goods and everything. It wasn't like the same Vader as from back in the day. So I liked that. Reva. It's so funny. So there's such a... people have such a love-hate relationship with all of these characters. And I just love building the world. I love adding more and more characters that you can say, what's their story, right? And that's what's been awesome. Sorry, I got something blocking me there. That's what's been so awesome about the Disney Plus streaming series. All of them. Because they tell story after story about, characters that we're familiar with and but expanding upon them. Or new characters. Or maybe characters that just had a brief moment here that get more of a story there, or maybe characters that we didn't even know existed at a certain moment, and then they get more of a story. I love it all. I just love it all. All right, we're gonna move on with the Mandalorian. Okay. Now these are in the protector cases. I did that mainly because when these figures came, they were a little bent. Now, ironically, it doesn't really matter because I'm going to open them up, but it's all right. And we have the famous or infamous Cara Dune. Gina Carano's ill-fated, meaning ill-fated character in the show. I mean, she didn't. The character did not die, but the actress decided to, voice an opinion. Totally right. She has every right to voice an opinion, and Disney has every right, or Lucasfilm, to say we don't support somebody who has that type of an opinion, so they are no longer working on the show. So I applaud. In some ways, I applaud Gina for making her opinions, and sticking to her guns. I get it. I don't agree with her opinion, but I support her right to say it. And I support the company, Disney, Lucasfilm, their right as a company, as a private company, to say we don't agree with that, and we don't want you associated with our product. You live your life, and you accept the consequences of your actions. That's it. You can't have it both ways, but whatever. And, there are people who decided to, give up on the Mandalorian or in the Star Wars world because they did not they did not agree with that. You know, they did not agree with Disney doing that, and I get that. So that's your right too. Me, Disney's an entertainment company. I like their entertainment. I will support their entertainment until I don't find it entertaining anymore. So that's kind of where I am. This, I think, we're still in the first season here. This is Queel. I love this character. I'm sorry that this character didn't get more life. I mean, literally, he didn't really last past the first season. Again, spoiler alert. But he was a fun character, and I enjoyed who it was. And it was really funny, was because I know he was only voiced by Nick Nolte, but he looked like Nick Nolte. His character looked like Nick Nolte. I was like, what the? How'd they do that? How'd they make this? Because Nick Nolte is not like that size, but... And I'll say this, he holds his weapon better than the Vintage Collection version does. So, I have spoken. I love that. Gonna lay him down there. Alright, and then of course, another breakout character from The Mandalorian. IG-11. Now, there are others with more experience with the physical sculpting efforts of all of the Star Wars figures, and they can probably tell you which parts of him are basically just a resculpt of IG-88, the other assassin droid that everyone knows. But for me, I am one that prefers, you know, to just enjoy the figure for what it is, not what parts it's made up of. I do appreciate that their weaponry, that is definitely, I'm putting it over my forehead, there is definitely a throwback to the vintage style weaponry, which I love, and I'm very excited for. And something about this also kind of has a throwback to the 12-inch figures that came out in the 70s, late 70s, and the IG-88 figure had the two weapons. It was fun. Initiate self-destruct. Please don't do that. Please do not do that. All right. So, a few more. Now, there are more coming. I did put it in order for the Boba Fett vintage figures. They have not arrived yet, so I'm not sure when they will. But, of course, very prominently and very important for today, and that is the Ahsoka. The Ahsoka vintage figure comes with two white lightsabers. Rosario Dawson is absolutely killing it, I believe, as Ahsoka. She's definitely a little bit more muted than her cartoon counterpart, voiced by the awesome Ashley Eckstein. It's even curved. You can even see that the lightsaber's curved a little bit. So these are... Now, I will say this about the figures holding their weapons. Lightsabers kind of have a challenge in my little display here because there's not a lot of depth to it. So if they're... Oh, you know what I'm going to try to do? I think... I don't know if this will work. Hopefully it will. I'm going to try to do it like... That didn't work. Okay, I'm going to have to go back. I see it, but I don't... Oh, no, it's right by my foot. There it is. Got it. Got it. It's good. Okay. A lot of people will put blooper stuff and they'll edit it out. Not me. I wanted to get it so that she holds it like the way Ahsoka did in the cartoon with the two sabers. Fantastic. I've been loving the Ahsoka series. At the time of this recording, we are up through episode 6. Yes, 6. So, got to see the spoiler alert. If you haven't seen it by now, see it. Spoiler alert, you know, the whole World Between Worlds final lesson from Anakin, which I thought was great. Such a throwback to the cartoon, to the Clone Wars cartoon series. And we got to see the introduction of Thrawn, the return of Ezra from Rebels. For people who don't know this, I know that might not mean much to them, and for that I say, watch Rebels, watch Clone Wars. It's amazing Star Wars entertainment that people just dismiss because it's a cartoon. So, speaking of cartoons, Bo-Katan, another great character who started off as part of the cartoon series. Started off in Rebels, started off in Clone Wars, ended up in Rebels, and voiced by, I don't know why I never seem to remember the names of it. The Starbuck, I'm going to say, voiced by Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica. You know who it is. Bo-Katan Kryze, and then she like literally showed up in character playing it. In fact, she might have been among the first, or if not the first, among the first actors that was a voice for a role and then became the character for the role. And of course now name is escaping me. But just a nice, great figure. Sorry that the helmet doesn't come off, but again, in certain times of year that might not have happened. Ah, yes. We have such an interesting character for the Star Wars universe. The character of Moth Gideon. I don't know what to make of Moth Gideon, honestly. You know, I mean, on the one hand, he seemed he seemed like he was kind of a but I think he got, he was a little bit of a, you can always tell by what they wear, this guy has his cape, he's just got a little bit of he's a little full of himself, so sadly, we did not see much more from, he was more of a, stepping stone, working to get Thrawn back, but also to formulate his own dark trooper army that all look like him. So definitely megalomaniac. But I love the old vinyl cape. Really cool stuff. I just love unboxing figures. It's just fun to do. I don't know. I know the boxing is great. I love keeping the packaging, but once I realized that, like, whenever I have a figure, by the way, armor, last but not least, whenever I have a figure that is the exact same card, but it has a nice vintage collection, more pristine version of the newer, upgraded type of sculpting, I realize that these are more fun to have loose. Who needs them in the card? Especially if we have the card already. It's like having two of the same character, but one is vintage and one is retro. One is vintage collection and one is retro collection. So, fun stuff. And since these cards are all pretty much the same level of, card damage, like wear and tear, I like the aesthetic of that, and I do like that some of the later versions, I think it used to all be, when they were first doing it, they were all the same level of damage. They were exactly the same. And now they appear to be different. So that is cool. And there is the armor. Ooh, a little fur. I've got a little fur back there, you can see. Definitely, more Return of the Jedi style sculpting on these characters, because they did more with them. The earlier versions of the figures, besides the vinyl cape and the cloth cape for the Jawa, they were really pretty simplistic, but this figure did a lot. So, we have them all sitting over here. So what I'm going to do is just go off camera for a moment. I'm going to put them in my little display, and then I'll show you the display. Here we go. Okay, so here is mostly our retro collection. I will say that if you look up here at the top, we have a couple of other things here. We have, these are some droid figures. This is from the vintage, like from the 80s. 3PO, R2, I forget his name. And then a Duloc from the Ewoks. And then this little guy's Friar Tuck from the Robin Hood, but it's the same body as a Gamorrean guard, so that's why I have him. And then you can see we start putting our other ones in. Now I will say the way this thing hangs on this hanger, it kind of leans back a little bit. So because it leans forward, they're kind of tipping, but they're generally okay. You can see them all there. Gene is looking a little down, but that kind of makes sense. And I decided that I was one short, so there was one I wasn't going to unbox, but I did off camera. And that's little Grogu with his little pram, but it fits. He's leaning forward a little bit, and there's the Vader that I didn't unbox on camera, but I had unboxed. Put him next to Obi-Wan. So there you go. Okay, and up here we have some reproduction figures, okay, which I have a few more spots to fill in there. And then we have this for retro, and then I have another retro ready to go just in case. And I even have another container beyond that. So I might readjust these to try to fit 4 of them up here. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so that'll do it for today's episode. Check out all the other content on Red 5 Network. Thank you, Red 5, for supporting the channel. Oh, Queel. Queel's very vain. He's looking in the mirror. Check out all the other Red 5 Network content. And thank you so much for supporting the channel. And until next time, folks, check me out on Instagram, Twitter, X. All right, and Darth Tuba Star Wars Unboxing page on Facebook. Email me DarthTuba77 if you have any, or at gmail.com if you have any questions or requests. Talk to you soon. Until next time, may the Force and the toys be with you. This is the way.